Well, welcome back to the Low Bottom High Rise podcast with me, your host, Moira Casaba. And you guys, my audience, you're in for a treat today. I have Mr. Kute Blackson in the house today. We actually were at an event together earlier in the year, both presenting. And it's just such an honor to have you on the show. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, yes, yes. You know, I could go on and on and on with all your accolades, all of the incredible things. I mean, I think I read earlier this week that Inc. magazine, there was a quote that was something like mindset coach to billionaires around the world or something.
Yeah.
Like
They mindfulness guru to the billionaires. Yeah.
mindfulness guru. So, hello, like now my audience is already like, yeah, he's your people. So we have so much to talk about, so much to talk about. I thought it was really, really cool when we were at this event together back in January this year that, you know, I think I was on stage before you, maybe. I'm
Mm,
almost positive. And then you came on, I don't know if you were right after me or a couple people after me,
mhm,
but there was this beautiful congruence of messages like with every single speaker at that event, but
mhm,
above everyone else
mm,
I thought, oh my gosh, he's speaking my language.
mm.
This is so much of what I was sharing, but in a different way, through a different
Wow.
voice, in a
Wow.
different kind of package, because we all know that
Mhm.
we can hear something 100
Yep.
times and then all of a sudden somebody says it differently and it just lands
Lands.
for us
Right.
and it
Right.
changes everything.
Mm.
So surrender.
Yeah.
Surrender. Coot, I can like hear this word in your accent in my dreams. I mean, you're number one, you're such a powerful speaker. You just have such a stage presence, unlike almost anyone I've ever seen on stage,
Mm.
honestly. But can you just kind of well, I want to dig into surrender, but let's actually start here. Let's go back just a little bit.
Sure.
Because, like I said, I could go on and roll out all the beautiful accolades and all of the amazing things and all the
Mm.
places you've been interviewed and magazines you've been in and news shows and all of that. But who would you say you are to the world? What is your definition of what you're doing in the world work wise and who you are in the world?
Yeah, I would say, it's hard to put into words, but for simplicity's sake, I'm a transformational teacher, transformational guide. I don't, 22-ish years ago, I started coaching people one-on-one before coaching was a thing. And I tell people I don't really coach people. I don't really teach people. I don't really train people. If anything, I uncoach, I
Yes.
unteach, I untrain, I uncondition people from the various layers and patterns of conditioning that we all develop over time from childhood as a survival mechanism. And so I create processes and um, experiences that are designed to help people see all of the ways that they are conditioned that they weren't seeing before so that they
Mm,
can heal, transform, release, let go, and really reconnect with their own authentic nature, reconnect with their truth and live that because in so many ways, we think we're free, but we're conditioned. We think we're free, but we're programmed. And we don't realize all the ways that we're programmed and conditioned because we think that who we are is who we are, but it's often a set of conditioned patterns and programming in response to childhood and
mm,
mom and dad and, all the things we all went through based on our stories. And so, yeah, I uncondition people. Look, in
yeah.
a simple way, I was born in Ghana, West Africa. My father's from Ghana. My mother's Japanese. I grew up in London. I live in the US. So on one level, I feel like I'm everything and nothing from everywhere and nowhere, a citizen of the world. And um, as a young boy, I wanted to go into the field of personal growth.
Mm,
But it started, I would say my journey began because my first memories as a young boy was seeing a crippled woman falling on the floor. She picks up the gravel and the sand that this man walks on, wipes it on her face, and stands up. And so week
wow.
after week, I grew up seeing blind people see and deaf people hear, and people stand up out of wheelchairs. Um, this man would look at a person in a wheelchair and say, "Hey, why are you sick? Stand up." And he put his hands on them, and they would stand up. And so this man was my father. He built
Oh, wow.
300 churches in Ghana, West Africa, a huge church in London, 5,000 people, 4 to 5,000 people every Sunday in London, hundreds of thousands of people
Mhm.
in Ghana. He was considered a miracle man. And so I grew
Mm,
up in this, and I think these things really informed who I am because I grew up in
yeah,
this spiritual context. He was a very
yeah,
spiritual man, mystical man, so
yeah.
to speak. And so I started speaking when I was age 8. I was ordained when I was 14, and I retired when I was 18. I'm like, I felt a calling to a different path. And
Yeah.
so what that did for me was I grew up with this sense of possibility. I grew up with a
Mm,
sense that there were no limitations. I think one of the blessings for me was I thought this was like everybody's childhood. And so
yeah.
it didn't seem that unusual for me. And so the miraculous and this sense of possibilities just seemed normal. And I think in many
Mm,
ways that was also a huge blessing because I didn't
yeah.
think it was a big deal. And
Right.
so I was in some ways I was raised in a context of deep spirituality. And
Mm,
that's what has really informed my life. And so I help people connect to who they are.
yeah. And get back to that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all available to us. Like I
Yes.
love that you shared. It was kind of your expectation of how the world shows up for you was miraculous,
Yes.
was, in an awe-inspiring life. And I
Yes.
feel like as adults, and that's certainly what I do, is try to bring people back to that's our God-given like
Yeah.
birthright,
Yeah.
like I was just in a conversation actually with somebody the other day that has a pastor background, and he was saying from his kind of religious stance, like, well, why should some people work so hard and really never experience any of those big blessings while other people don't really end up having to work that hard, yet things come, they're just blessed beyond measure. So I
Mhm.
have this question for you because I know what I believe.
Mm.
But for me, I'm like, that comes back to their expectation and their belief and the energetic vibration that they're
Mm.
living in, right? So often when people are, and I have fallen into this, I'm a really hard worker, and my
Uh-huh.
programming was I just have to work harder in order to gain more of the things that I want in life, right? So I
Mhm.
had to really, I'm still trying to rewire that belief. But it's my belief that there's not, if our story is life is unfair, why did this person get this and this person didn't?
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
becomes our story. Life is unfair. That becomes our
Mhm.
reality. That becomes our
Mhm.
experience.
Mm.
But it's my belief that that doesn't have to be our experience at all,
Mhm.
that all of us can live the reality of abundance, of immeasurable blessing, of
Mm.
witnessing miracles every day. That's not to
Mhm.
say that we aren't going to struggle, that, things will
Mhm.
happen in this world that are hard.
Yeah.
But I believe that we have so much choice
Mm.
in how we really experience the world. So, is
Mm.
that your belief system that it's all available to each and every one of us?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes and no, because what I have experienced through the process of is life isn't necessarily either or.
Mm,
It's we live in a world and you open up a deep question. So I think it really deserves a deep, a deeper, nuanced answer. And,
mm,
and and so we live in a world, I think, of infinitely valid but simultaneously contradictory realities inherent in the nature of life.
mm,
And I think as human beings, we look for it's this or it's that. And that's why I say I think it's not one or the other. It's
mm.
and it's
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
And so I feel as though we are all souls. And as souls, we incarnate into this human experience
Hmm.
in order to learn, in order to grow, in
Hmm.
order to evolve. And in a sense, life is kind of like a university for our soul's
Yeah,
evolution.
for
And
sure.
everyone is our teacher, and everything is our curriculum, and
Hmm.
school is always in session. And as human beings, we have been conditioned to look at life from a very one-dimensional level. We'll call this like the goal line, like what happened, what didn't happen, what did you achieve, what did you not achieve, and you got the goal, you didn't get the goal, you got the house, you achieved the goal, you didn't. It's like the goal
Yeah.
line. But
Right.
underneath the goal line is, you could say, the soul line, in terms of like the lessons that your soul is seeking to experience in this multidimensional experience that is life, which is really a school. And underneath what is happening, and events and sickness and illness and betrayal and divorce and all the events of life,
Mm-hmm.
are the lessons that your soul is really seeking to learn inside of an experience.
Yes.
And so I think when we can see life from a deeper multidimensional standpoint of, oh, I'm a soul, then
Yeah.
you realize that on some level, the purpose of life is the degree to which you learn the lessons for why you're going through any experience, and the degree to which you realize and become who you truly are, manifesting who you truly
Mm-hmm.
are, which
Mm-hmm.
is your true infinite divine essence and nature. To remember that, to reawaken to that in the challenges and in the difficulties of life. And I think on some level, the purpose of life is evolution.
For
We
sure.
have incarnated in order to evolve. And so for me, when people say, oh, this is success and that is success and achieving, sometimes even through a divorce, and even through pain, and even through seeming unfairness, and even through a dis-ease and physical challenges, it's like, that doesn't mean we're necessarily failing. It might
Right.
mean that we have to go our soul is seeking to learn something by going through a difficult classroom in that
Right.
moment, and so I
Yeah.
think when we can see life from that different context, then rather than being victims, so like, well, why is this
Yeah.
happening to
Yeah.
me? Then we can really ask, like, why is this happening to me?
Right.
And what is my soul seeking to learn? And what is it? Why did I attract this situation? And why
Yes.
did I attract this person? And why did I attract this betrayal?
Yeah.
And, what am I seeking to learn? And what is my soul seeking to learn? I think when we can really unlock that lesson,
Mm-hmm.
then we have a different perspective for why we're going through what we're going through, even if it's incredibly difficult.
Yes.
Then it changes everything. So the other piece I would say is, I think that there are three, you could say, pillars to success.
Mm.
Um, for as much as we do, in a sense, create our reality, I think in some sense we create our reality by the way that we choose to interpret our experience.
Yes.
Not necessarily, oh, I created my reality and I manifested that parking spot,
Right.
because then everybody in The Secret would be skinny, have an 8-pack, and wouldn't be divorced. And so
Right.
if it was just that simplistic, then
Yeah.
there are a lot of amazing, good humans that should be billionaires, and there's a lot of
Right.
billionaires that should be homeless and broke, and like,
Right.
they don't deserve it because they've cheated, stole, and what have you. And so, and there's a lot of celebrity successful people that hate themselves, yet they've
Right.
managed to achieve incredible levels of success. So certain
Yeah.
things don't add up. And so I think there's a few pillars of success. Number one, let's call it destiny. Destiny, for some spiritual folks, might call it karma, right?
Yeah.
And you could say destiny and karma is the energetic momentum, stream of momentum that we are all born into. And we're all
Mm.
born into that. The Hindus believe in a past life. I mean, I don't know if there's such a thing, but maybe there is. But
Yeah.
even if there isn't, let's say the stream of destiny momentum based on your parents,
Mm-hmm.
your grandparents, your
Mm-hmm.
generations, every thought, every action, the way they made money, the actions they took,
Yeah.
the secrets, the addictions, all of those dysfunctions that have been maybe not resolved, passed down through generations. That is a stream that trickles and flows down to next generations, that we are all born into that stream, whether we like it or not.
Right.
Bill Gates's daughter has a slightly different energetic karmic momentum based on the stream
Right.
that she is born into. Now, is that the only determination of success? No, because there's
Right.
lots of rich kids that end up poor, right? A lot
Right.
of rich
Right.
kids that end up crazy. And but there is a certain stream of momentum that we're born into. The addictive energies that have not been resolved. Sometimes we end up sort of energetically playing that out, and we don't even know,
Mhm.
like, why do I feel this?
Right.
Why am I drawn to certain situations? Why do I react in certain situations? Some of it's not even ours. It's just the energy
Yeah.
that the momentum that we're caught up into. Is like getting
Yeah.
into a river, and the river just
Right.
takes you, right. And so some of it's that I think needs to be acknowledged. So that
I think we're just waking up to that, right?
yes,
Like
right,
as spiritually involved and growth mindset as I have been for decades,
yeah,
even for me, this is somewhat new.
yeah,
That I'm putting it in the same camp as like, well, my green eyes were passed down. My,
yes,
the
yes,
like
yeah,
the
that,
things that are physically showing up in my body
yeah,
are passed down.
yeah,
I'm really starting to
yes.
understand all of the things are
Yes.
passed
Yeah.
down.
That's why I said it's a bit nuanced,
Yeah.
I just make my yeah, but
Yeah.
Bill Gates's daughter, your dad, there's a certain
Yes.
energy of momentum that you are is
Right.
different than a person in a favela in Rio or a slum in South Africa that,
Right.
there's just certain
Yeah.
now, just because you're born into something doesn't necessarily mean you're stuck there.
Right.
Maybe like this is like 30 a third of the impact of your life and success. I would say the next pillar might be your will, your
Mm.
intention, and
Hmm.
your commitment. So let's
Mm.
call this 33%, right? Your
Right.
will, your intention, your commitment. And so even if you've been born into a favela, even if you've been born into a certain situation, the possibility of saying, you know what, I'm going to do something with my life. I'm going
Yeah.
to exert my God-given,
Yes.
energy that I've
Yeah.
been given, the gift of life and my will, and I'm going to do therapy. I'm going to heal. I'm going
Hmm.
to work hard. I'm going to overcome. I'm going to maximize the best that I can do given what I have. And
Yes.
so this is where your own willpower and hard work comes into place,
Mm.
and so I think
Mhm.
that's that second pillar that
Yeah.
then does have an effect. And maybe the third, which we don't have to get into too much, is environment,
Yeah.
physical
Yeah.
environment, house environment, shape, spaces, location, city environment has an impact. And
Right.
so in many ways, on one level, we can't, I don't believe that we can completely control what happens to us.
Hmm.
Because I'm sure that the fact is, there's many people listening that maybe you were married at one time, you thought you were going to be married to that person forever,
Right.
and they cheated, and
Right.
you didn't like make that happen.
Yeah.
Now, you can be a victim about that or see life as a school and ask yourself, okay, what was my soul seeking to learn? Okay, what does this person or situation show me about myself?
Right.
Right. And you can learn those lessons, you can heal, and you can choose to see the situation in an empowered way so that you can move on
Yeah.
and create a new reality. But I don't believe we can. It's like saying you can control the ocean.
Right. Right.
I don't think we can necessarily control the ocean. And the
Right.
best surfers will tell you they don't try to control the ocean,
Yeah.
but they can control how they surf
Themselves.
the
Yes.
ocean and inside of the ocean. Because the truth is, in life, shit's going to happen.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
big challenges, the big waves in life, they don't call us up and say, okay, Moira, I'm a big freaking challenge that's
Right.
going to bust your life apart. I'm looking at my calendar here. When would be a good time to show up and screw up your life?
Right. Right.
It just happens. And so
Yeah.
many of the things we can't control, but we can control how we choose to see it. We can
Yeah.
control the meaning that we give it. We can control what we choose to make things mean. And based on what we choose to make things mean, that does determine our
Hmm.
reality. And so, in that sense, we create
Absolutely.
our reality by how we choose to make things mean. So,
Yeah.
on some level, nothing really has to mean anything
Right.
other than the meaning we choose to give it. And
Right.
that's the power that we have.
Yes. 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 That's what we can control
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
And that just goes back to what you were saying in the beginning. When you have this, I mean, really, it's a belief system, how
Yeah.
you interpret and see the world, that you believe that
Mhm.
you are a soul incarnate on this earth, given this
Yeah.
physical body. And I've had that belief since I read Gary Zukav when I was
Oh
like
yeah.
13 years old,
Yeah, there you
The Seat
go.
of the Soul.
Yeah.
And I read that whole like philosophy that, this is all a classroom. And I was like, this just at 13 years old, I'm like, this makes so much sense. Like it just seemed like common sense to me. It's so hard when we're in the pain, right? To
It's so hard.
remember
It's
that.
hard. It's hard.
But if you can remind yourself of that kind of on the day in and day out days, I think that's what's so important. I'm always a big believer in the mindset work, in the daily work. I have a health and wellness and fitness background, and I'm like, we all understand that we have to be consistent with our physical fitness. But there's such a gap in understanding that you have to have that same consistency, if not more consistency, with your mental fitness, right? That what I am doing this morning when I sit down for 10 minutes and I read my vision and I write down my gratitude, and it seems a little silly and a little fluffy to most people, that is just kind of stacking the bricks that I'm going to stand on the hard days when something comes and just knocks me over, right? It's like I've built this foundation, like little grain of sand by grain of sand, because I show up every day and I do that work to remind myself that this is a classroom, that everything can happen for me, that it's how I perceive things, that it's the meaning that I attach to things, that I can choose to, my thing is I always say, how is this a gift? And I always say, you can do this in traffic, you can do this in tragedy, right? Like I have so many stories where I have been literally in rage mode because of traffic. I mean, it's crazy when you're a mindset coach and you're like, whoa, and you find yourself in those moments of losing your mind. But you can say, wait a second, how is this a gift? Instantaneously change everything on a dime, right? Go from, rage where you just want to punch the windshield to, wait a second, I've been meaning to call my friend Susie and we haven't had time to catch up. And you end up having this beautiful conversation stuck in bumper to bumper traffic. Same thing. I've had moments and days and seasons of tragedy, downward spiral. I don't think I can come back from this. And then in that moment of saying to myself, what if? Just what if? What if this was a gift? What if this was the lesson? What if this was just something in my path trying to teach me? This was for me, not against me. In that moment, the light comes in and everything changes. So I love that you shared that. I would love for you to speak just everything that you share about surrender is so incredibly beautiful. And the way that I teach something very similar is I always say, listen to the whisper. When you told this story, I have butchered your story to, was it Thailand? Was it Thailand that you were? I have butchered that story. To Bali. Yes, there were so many pieces to that story, but that's kind of what I'm always trying to teach people. And we all know that people learn through story, is that there's been all these moments when you live a life like you and I live, where we're kind of listening for the signs and the signal and the nuances and that just tap in our soul and in our gut, and you follow it. Like, it's insane what happens, And people ask me all the time, like, how have you accomplished what you've accomplished? My mom used to always say, I don't know how you always land on your feet, but somehow you always land on your feet. I'm like, because I listen and I go. Just last week, I had the opportunity of a lifetime. Every friend, every family member saying just point blank, you have to do this. You have to do this. And I finally said no. I finally turned down the opportunity of a lifetime because I just knew on some level it wasn't right. And I still haven't figured that one out. But I know it'll come. The second I made the decision, there was freedom, there was peace. And I said, I don't know how this is going to play out, but I once I made that decision, that was insane to everybody else in my world. There was peace. And I know that was the right decision. And I think something miraculous, I expect something miraculous to come in that place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So talk to me about that, Kute, because you just have such an eloquent way of talking about surrender.
Yeah, look, I think in our culture today, we have this, misconception about what surrender means. We think surrender is weak. We think surrender is passive. We think surrender is waving a white flag. We think surrender is giving up, right? We think if I surrender, I'm going to be a doormat. I won't manifest my goals, dreams, and desires. I'm going to be left behind. I'm going to get less in life. And so, no, I don't want to get less. I want what I want, right? And so I actually say, look, what if you really understood the true meaning of surrender, the raw essence of surrender, you didn't get less, but you got more. Maybe not what you thought,
Right.
maybe not what you even intended and expected, but what if it was better? What if it was beyond? And I think if we look at the best things in our life that happen, all of us, if we really are sincere and we look at the best things in our lives that we've experienced, most of it we didn't plan. Most of it kind of happened in the process of like, oh, I didn't expect this. Oh, this was, and so if that's the case, to me, surrender is I believe that surrender, and I would say this is from my experience of life, not just from theory. Anytime I've surrendered, magic has happened. And so I really believe that surrender is the most powerful thing that we can do. It is the key to the next level of our life. It's the real secret to real manifestation in a bigger sense. And so if you look at the truly great ones, whether it was a Jesus, a Buddha, a Mother Teresa, a Mandela, a Martin Luther King, a Bruce Lee, a Muhammad Ali, you know, my childhood heroes, great in their own way. At some point, I think they all had to surrender themselves to life. They all had to surrender themselves to the divine. They all had to surrender themselves to their soul. They all had to surrender themselves to that calling or that deeper impulse in their soul that was bigger than their logic and their mind and their ego's capacity to see. And in that surrender, they transcended their human limitations. And they tapped into another dimension of themselves. They tapped into another dimension of life. And that's when life began to use them and life began to manifest through them in ways that they could not have even imagined. I'm sure Mandela, it wasn't on his plan, in his plan to spend 27 years in prison. You know, you look at Gandhi was a kind of successful lawyer. I'm sure it wasn't in his plan to let go of that and go down a certain path. Martin Luther King had a nice, comfortable gig going at his church. He didn't want to be the leader of the civil rights movement. And so there comes a moment where we all have to realize that we reach the end of our ego's capacity to make things happen. And that's the beginning of the magic. And when I say magic, you know, the book is called The Magic of Surrender. For me, magic is that which is beyond our current human ego's capacity to imagine even what's possible. It's that which is beyond. It's the more joy, the more abundance, the more. And so surrender is a letting go of control, or I would say the illusion that we're in control. Surrender in control to me is a master addiction. Surrender is it's when you let go of the idea of who you think you should be and the life that you think you should be living, right? Because we all have this idea. And when you let that go, then you can be open to the deeper truth of the life that you're truly destined and designed and incarnated to live. And that, I think, is when we activate grace. And that is when we activate our soul's true power and potential. And so for me, the old paradigm is, I call it the ego-based model for creating life. What do you want? Get clear on what you want. Know what you want.
Right.
And I think, look, it's helpful to know what you want and write your goals down and have a vision board. And I think the divine and the universe is beyond your vision board. It's way bigger than that. And so the old ego-based model is about, you got to know what you want, got to get clear what you want and go make it happen, which is great. And I found you can live a good life this way, but it's usually limited. Because when you create from your ego, the ego, which is that conditioned sense of self that is based on past experiences, you will end up creating limitation because the ego is in and of itself limited. And at some point we end up manifesting what we thought we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
only to realize that what we thought we wanted was just what we thought we wanted based on who we
Yeah.
thought we were. And if we're
Yeah.
not in touch with our true nature,
Mm-hmm.
then what we think we want is going to be limited. And many times our goals can be projections of unmet needs from childhood and
Yeah.
fear and reactivities. And so for me, the question, when we talk about surrender, there's a different question. That question is an infinite question. That question is an expansive question. That question becomes not what do I want? The question becomes, what is it that life is seeking to manifest through me? What is it that what is it that God is seeking to manifest through? What is it that the universe is seeking to express and manifest through me?
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think
Yes.
when
Yes.
we
Oh,
ask that
so good.
question, then we can open ourselves beyond our logic and our mind and our fears and
Yeah.
then we can truly open ourselves like, okay, then we can open ourselves to listen and be available
Yeah.
to catch the deeper vision of the infinite intelligence of life itself
Yes.
that is not limited to past experience.
Right.
Then we start creating in a way that is truly, then we start manifesting in a way that is truly unlimited. So
Yeah.
then we can align our personality, our ego, our goal setting, our
Yeah.
planning, our
Our
money,
experience,
our
our
resources.
talents.
Yes,
Yeah.
in alignment with the deeper vision. And then we go into action.
Yeah.
Then we give 100%. But I think it's important to go into action without attaching to the
Yeah.
result, attaching to the outcome. Then we can stay open. To me, this is the essence of surrender.
And I feel like when we are going at it from that angle, that 100%, we are so energized, right? It's not about hustling harder and
Yeah.
grinding more and doing this and doing that. I mean, you're speaking to my soul right now, literally, literally my soul, because of what I just walked through last week. I mean, I was tearing up earlier as you were speaking because what I was clear on last week when I was, weighing all the pros and cons and this opportunity involved a lot of money. This opportunity involved a lot of fame. This opportunity involved all the things of the ego, right? But then my rational brain is like, well, money is important to my children's future. Like, I also have to be a responsible parent, a
Mhm,
responsible adult.
mhm, mhm.
And it's kind of, I feel like that's how the ego really plays tricks on you and gets you
Yeah.
all twisted up in it. And what I want to point out in this conversation too is all of those things that we think we only want them because of the feeling we think it will produce,
Mhm,
right? It'll make us feel safety. It'll make us feel joy. It'll make us feel connection. It'll make us feel worthiness.
mhm.
When we go this opposite route, when everything comes into alignment and we come into our true, like you said, what is the universe, the world trying to manifest through me? You get all of those feelings. Like all of those
Mhm.
things come without having to achieve the goal that you think is going to bring you the feeling,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and so what we really truly want, the emotions that we're looking to experience and embody, I think are actually a lot easier and a lot closer than we feel like they are. That because we think
Yeah.
they're at the top of the mountaintop. And I've been
Mhm,
to the top of the mountaintop. They're not
mhm,
there. You know?
mhm, mhm.
And
I think
yes,
when
I
you come,
just
yeah, when you come into alignment with your true soul's flow,
yeah,
then you're in the flow.
yeah,
Maybe your mind might not think you're in the flow, should have taken the money, should have, but
yeah,
when you get out of sync with your soul's flow because something looks good out here, it it eventually it never really works because you're no longer in sync with your true
right,
flow. So
right.
so it looks like you're taking a step forward, but you end up at some point hitting
Yeah,
you know, hitting something that takes you backwards. But
right.
when you're truly in the flow of your soul and you don't compromise your soul, you will always end up in the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right thing. You may not take the route that you most expect,
Mm-hmm,
but when you're working in harmony with nature,
mm-hmm,
nature supports itself and the
mm,
fulfillment of itself. And that's, I think, where the real magic happens. I
yeah,
think what I have found, the deeper I go, is strange, but the less choice I have,
mm,
the freer I feel.
Yes. The road gets narrower.
Yes, but the more an ego you are, or the more you live by ego, the more choice you think you have, the more
Right.
limited you actually are. You
Right.
know,
Right.
and so yeah, when you truly surrender, what I want people to get is you tap into another dimension of life,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's like soul math. You
Yeah.
know, when you're working with the ego, so well, 1 + 1 is 2, and 2 + 2 is 4. 4 + 4 is 8. 8
Mm-hmm.
+ 8 is 16. But when you're working with the matters of the soul, 8 + 8 is kind of what ends up being whatever it needs to be
Yeah.
sometimes for the fulfillment of your own destiny and
Yeah.
purpose, right? And so I think then we can really trust that and follow that without compromise.
Yeah.
That's when we see the magic unfold.
Yeah. And I want to offer to the audience, and then I have a question for you, that for me and for you, I believe it's not that hard anymore because we have stacked so many experiences
Mm-hmm.
where we have stepped out into the surrender and we're like
Ah.
blown away. You know, we have all these stories. You have your Bali story. I have 1,000 stories that I could tell you about, like where people are like, that's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, but then this, then this, then this, then this. And they're miracles upon miracles. You just can't make these things up. So we
Mhm.
have that experience that when last week, when I have that, crossroads that I'm at, even though I've had 1,000 experiences and
Mhm.
I know which way to go, it's still so hard, but I can make the leap where
Yeah.
most people wouldn't, you
Yeah.
know? And so my question to you is, how do you begin this, right? Especially as a man, because I think, and I'm not going to get into the, we're not getting into an argument here, but I do think, like, if I'm thinking of the man who was, had a stay-at-home wife and
Yeah.
3 kids,
Yeah.
and he's the
Yes.
only
Yes.
one
Yes.
bringing
Yes. Yeah.
in
It's
income
real.
to his family. Yeah, super real. And he's feeling this call, this unalignment in his current life
Yeah.
situation, whether it
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
career or whatever
Yeah.
it is. And he's feeling this call, and your head
Good.
just gets so in the way, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
just, that would be so irresponsible of me to just take this leap of faith and go pursue something,
Yeah.
you
So
know.
so let me share some guidance, some practical things, and some man-woman things in that dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Not to make it about that, but I
Yeah.
think it's important since there's a specific example you gave.
Yeah.
What I have found is, let's just in the scenario of a man, right? But it could be with anyone. But let's take the scenario of a guy who, you have a family, you have to be responsible, you got kids. Oh shit. And
Yeah.
and and so the thing that blocks us really are all the ways we lie to ourselves,
Mm.
and all the ways we pretend, and all the games that we play, and all the, as human beings, we've been conditioned to lie to ourselves from childhood, to
Yeah.
betray who we are in order to get love, validation, approval from mom and dad, in order to
Mhm.
betray what we feel, in order to not feel the craziness of the pain of what's going on in our childhoods. Like, no, I'm
Right.
fine, when we're not.
Right.
And so we've disconnected from parts of ourselves in order to function and survive. And so this is like a survival mechanism, but it
Mhm.
keeps us stuck. There is no transformation without truth. There is no next level without truth.
Mhm.
And so I think for all of us, we come to the point in our life where the life that we have created, if we're evolving and growing and doing the work, we will come to the point in our life where the life we've created is too small, becomes too small for what our soul is seeking to become.
Yes.
We will outgrow it. It's like, oh, these shoes don't fit anymore. Okay, these socks don't fit anymore. And
Mhm.
so most of us, we feel pain because we're wearing the same shoes from kindergarten, and we're trying
Yes.
to fit ourselves. We're now 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, trying to fit ourselves into kindergarten shoes, into high school shoes. It doesn't fit anymore. And
Right.
so this is the pain that we feel. And so what I want people to know is, if you're feeling pain, this is a blessing, and this is a
Mhm.
gift. And this is
Yeah.
also a sign that you're on the right path, because if you're growing, you're going to feel pain. If you're
Right.
growing, you're going to hit up against the edges of your life. And this is a call to expand and keep evolving. And so Pain is a signal. The challenge is most of us, we distract ourselves. We drink it away,
Mhm.
sex it away, smoke it away, shop it away, social media.
Yes.
We avoid the pain and we end up making ourselves sick. How do we know that we're lying to ourselves? We feel emotional pain,
Yeah.
depression, anxiety, stress, resentment, anger. We just feel tired. A sort of emotional pain. We feel a physical pain, a
Mhm.
tiredness, a backache, shoulder ache, neck
Mhm.
ache. Some subconscious is manifesting in your physical, ongoing disease.
Right.
Sometimes life stops flowing, right?
Uh-huh.
Or you might attract people into your life that reflect to you your suppressed feelings of frustration, resentment, and anger. Like, why is Moira so mad? Well,
Right.
is it she that's mad, or is it me that's mad? Because I keep
Yeah.
attracting people that are angry, right? And
Yes.
so we have to look at the pain and use pain as feedback and use pain as a
Yes.
friend. The
Yes.
only way through is we have to be willing. So what does this man do in this situation? You have to be willing to tell yourself the truth.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? Just starting with the truth. Like,
Mhm.
I am depressed.
Yeah.
I hate my job. I am no longer fulfilled working my job. Now, it can be
Right.
scary to acknowledge this because, like, oh no, like what now? We're
Yeah.
afraid of the consequences. Like, oh, if I acknowledge this, then I'm going to have to leave. If I
Right.
acknowledge this, I have 3 kids and a wife and a mortgage, and on and
Yeah.
on and on. And so many times we kind of pretend that we don't know,
Mm.
rather than saying, hey, here is the truth. And so what I tell people is take the pressure off of yourself of having to take any action. You don't have
Yes.
to act. You don't
Yes.
have to like quit my job now. Oh, that can be a
Right.
bit scary. Just start with the truth. I hate my job. I'm not fulfilled. This is not my purpose. I'm
Yeah.
miserable and I'm unhappy. And just feel that.
I can feel the freedom in that.
Yes,
I can
just
feel the
just just
freedom in
acknowledge
just
that.
admitting that
Just
versus the torture when we are
just
per
acknowledge. I would yes,
yes.
just acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Or I'm unhappy. I'm no longer in love with my husband. Oh,
Yeah.
that's scary. Just you don't have to break up.
Right.
Just acknowledge the truth, because then that allows the feelings to come up, which then can lead to the next step. And the
Mhm.
next step, which might lead to a conversation, the next step, which might lead to
Right.
therapy, the next step, which might lead to, so as a man, if you're miserable, unhappy, not feeling your job, acknowledge the truth. Number one, remove all and every distraction from your life that
Mm.
is numbing and anesthetizing the true feeling of dissatisfaction. Because somehow,
That's a tall order.
yes, somehow the way we cope is we anesthetize our feeling,
Mhm.
which allows us to keep going for another 10 years.
Right.
Remove the distractions and take daily time to
Yeah.
sit with yourself, journal, feel, explore what you want to do, explore what's real for you. Begin that internal exploration. And then, number three, start exploring using the time that you're at your job to explore what is it I'd want to do? What is it I'd
Mhm.
like to do? Where is it I'd like to go? What is it I'd like to create? So you don't have to leave right away.
Right.
Many people who say, I hate my job. And I ask them, well, what have you done in the last 3 months, 6 months, year to move yourself in a different direction?
Right.
Nothing. And right. And so
Yeah.
while telling yourself the truth, it's easier to deal with where you are when you're acknowledging where you are, but you're also creating a plan for where
For
you want to
sure.
go,
For sure.
versus I'm just stuck in where I am and now there's no end and it just seems helpless.
Right.
So when you
Right.
can be creating a pathway, and it might be like, you know what, 2 years, you know what,
Yeah.
3 years, it might even be 5 years, but at least now
Right.
you have something to move towards where you're being responsible and proactive for what you want to create,
Yeah.
rather than just being a helpless victim to your situation. So that's
Yeah.
that's the last thing I'll say is, if you're a man, you're unclear, use this time also to really reflect and get in touch with your purpose.
Mm.
What your true purpose is in life. Because as a man, if you're not clear on your purpose, you are lost as a
Yeah.
masculine being. And if you go to your wife, your woman, your wife, and you say, honey, I'm lost. Okay, that's one thing. But if you go to her and you say, look, this is how I feel,
Yeah.
but I'm really clear what my freaking purpose is in life.
Yes. Yes.
And I don't have it figured out yet, but I'm clear what my purpose is in life, and I'm
Yeah.
clear the direction I have to go. She is much more likely, if she loves you and feels the sincerity and depth of the clarity and commitment to your purpose, she's much more likely to trust you as a man if
Mm-hmm.
she feels your dedication to your truth, integrity, and purpose
Mm-hmm.
rather than just floundering in something that you hate. It will
Yeah.
be hard for her to trust you as a man if you're like, well, I just want to leave, but I'm just floundering in life and I have
Right.
no sense of any direction. But if she can feel the clarity of your
Yeah.
direction and the integrity, the willingness to live in integrity with that, she
Mm-hmm.
is much more likely to support you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's the
And really
difference.
champion you,
Yes,
you
for
know, I
sure.
mean,
For sure.
and I can't imagine as a man or woman in that situation how incredibly awful it would feel to know that you hate what you're doing and you have to leave, but have no idea what your purpose is versus how you would feel if you're like, this is out of alignment. I hate my job. I have
Yeah,
to leave, but I know exactly why I'm put in this earth. I'm
yeah,
not saying that's an easy thing to find. It takes a
yeah.
lot of work, but the feeling of those two are
Yeah,
radically
I would
different.
tell that man, and these are such some masculine feminine dynamics. I mean, I would tell that man that if you stay in a job that you hate where you're compromising your integrity and
Mm,
you're betraying yourself, even though your wife might be on the surface happy because there's a level of security there, she will lose respect and trust in your heart and your integrity as a man because she knows she knows the level at which you are compromising your truth and integrity,
right. Right. I totally agree with you on that one.
even though she
100%.
might not say it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is, I mean, all of that is so good. I love kind of the concrete 1, 2, 3, 4. I just need that for myself, you know?
Yes, yes.
And even what you said about taking the time, right? Just committing. And I think people hear things like that, like take the
Take the
time daily
time.
to journal, to
Unplug.
write, to do this. But like we're saying, really take the
Really
time
do it.
because,
An hour a day. We have an hour a day.
yeah,
Everyone could make. And if your job, if you hate your job enough and it sucks enough, and you don't have an hour a day, then it doesn't. Then you don't really hate it that
it
much.
doesn't suck enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
absolutely.
sometimes I tell
Absolutely.
people, I wish people more suffering
Right.
because
Because
sometimes
that's
only
what
what.
gets them to move.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I remember the very first time I ever heard Trent Shelton speak. I didn't even know who he was many years ago. And I was just captivated. I'm listening to him on stage. And he said, you know what I tell people? You know, he's all fired up. It's Trent Shelton. And he's like, you know what I tell people when they tell me they have a hard time with commitment? And I'm like sitting on the edge of my seat because everyone I work with has a hard time with like committing to the action, you know? And he's like, you just don't care. Like you're saying you care, but you just don't. Like you got to be honest with yourself. Like if you can't take the action, it's not that big of a deal to you. So stop acting like it is. Right. And I was like, God, there's so much truth in that. So much truth. Well, let's wrap here.
Mm,
What do you have coming up? How can people plug in?
sure.
There's a book on the horizon. There's another book
Yeah.
that they can get. I mean, tell me all the things, honestly.
Well, I would say one of the simplest ways is The Magic of Surrender. I wrote
Yeah.
a very inspiring book, The
Yeah.
Magic of
It's
Surrender, Finding
incredible.
the Courage to Let Go. Very simple to read. You can get the paperback version on Amazon. So I would say check that out because so much
Yeah.
of the gems are there. Um, I think one of the things that I've been most passionate about, I would say, is some of my deepest work.
Mm.
Twice a year for the last 13 years, I do an event in Bali. It's truly life changing, and so I would say anyone listening, if you've been inspired by the conversation, uh, maybe you feel as though you've been put on the planet for a purpose that is bigger than yourself,
Yeah.
and you feel ready to heal, ready to transform, ready to connect with your true essence and share those gifts with the world. Um, the event is called Boundless Bliss, the Bali Breakthrough
Wow.
Experience. 12 days with me in Bali, 18 people. It's a life-changing
Wow.
experience. You can find out information, www.boundlessblissbali.com. That's boundlessblissbali.com.
Wow.
The next event is July the 20th through the 31st. That's 20th through the 31st. And the last one we will ever do, because I'm wrapping these up. This is the final year, is December the 5th through the 16th. But we have a few spots for the July event.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I got to get there.
Yeah, let's do
I
it.
got to make it happen. That's amazing. And I just want to back you up on that. I mean, my experience with immersion
Yes,
retreats,
yes,
truly nothing. There is
yeah.
nothing that I've done in my life that
Mm,
compares to that. I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in my growth and coaches and mentors and things like that.
mhm.
But going to an immersion retreat knocks
That's my
everything else.
specialty.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I can't even fathom being in Bali with you for 12 days.
Life changing.
Amazing.
Life
Amazing. Well,
changing.
everything, we're going to link everything in the show
Thank
notes
you.
for everybody. Absolutely. Anything you want to leave, last words of wisdom for my listeners?
Wow. Surrender is the password to freedom. That's the
Yeah.
bottom line. Surrender is the password to freedom. And if you want more magic in your life,
Yeah.
the degree of magic you will experience is in direct proportion to the degree of your surrender.
So good. So, so, so good. Oh, Kute, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your time, for your knowledge, for your wisdom, just for your energy and your work in the world. It is such a blessing to me, to my audience, and to the world. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.